Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 1st of June 2015, the podcast that never minds the furthermore. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me this week, he joined us in our very first hangout, and we saw him briefly last Thursday, and now we've got him on the podcast. Please welcome Jim Goebel.
Heidi-ho there, friends and neighbors.
All right, so for our first story, our old friends, the IRS, apparently hackers got into the IRS's Get Transcript system and got the personal information from more than 100,000 taxpayers.
100,000 taxpayers. That's, realistically, it's not a huge number. There have been a lot worse break-ins, but the problem here is that most of them are dealing with your taxes or your social security number or that sort of crap on a regular basis.
Well, and they're getting your transcripts, which means they basically have your life. They have your income, they have your refund amount. They can even file a false return if they file it early enough before yours and get your money.
Well, yeah, it's more of a identity theft thing in a lot of the hacking scandals that you see coming around. I recall just this last week that there was a huge security breach with Adult Friend Finder, where I guess they got away with the whole database of however many hundreds of thousands, possibly a couple of million people that were on that thing. And
yeah, and they mentioned like the possibility for blackmail, things like that.
I guess the most surprising thing about this story that I've read is that more records weren't stolen, given the government's track record with websites.
Well, here's the disturbing thing. This is what the IRS said, quote, "In all, about 200,000 attempts were made from questionable email domains, with more than 100,000 of those attempts successfully clearing authentication hurdles." So more than 50% of the attempts actually worked.
Wasn't there a story in the last couple of years, I could be wrong on this, and I probably am, that most government computer passwords are like password or 1234 or admin or something like that?
Yeah, we've covered a couple stories like that where they just leave the password at the default or something.
You never do that. Not even for the most mundane things like a website that you don't even go to every once in a while. You don't do that. And in fact, I was at the point where I was actually using my password for the same password for everything, but
bad.
After listening to your podcast, I got LastPass. And I've been using that for a while. I still got a lot of things I need to do because you go on, through life and you don't realize how many things you got passwords for.
Oh, it's amazing. I've got over 400 of them in LastPass.
Yeah, I don't have that many because I haven't gone through to all of the sites that I'm on, but I'm still going on the internet and then every now and then hitting a site that I don't remember, having that. Actually, I remember having been on, but not for a long time. And I'm like, oh, crap, I should probably change this one, too. And it's just a never-ending Easter egg hunt. But in this day and age, you got to do it.
Well, the nice thing about LastPass is it'll go into your browsers and pull your saved passwords in. And I just went through, I was just doing it this like 10 minutes at a time. I'd go and do a bunch of sites over a period of a few months after I first installed it. And eventually I got all my passwords converted over to randomly generated passwords.
A lot of the reason people don't do that sort of thing, because let's be honest, it is a pain in the ass to do that because you got to put in your password, you change it, you got to wait sometimes 30 seconds to maybe a whole day to get the confirmation email. Depends on how bogged down the servers are in that.
And you got to check your junk folder.
And like I said, in this day and age, you got to do it. But that's just passwords. There are other ways that people can, hack your system. Not just password. The password is the easiest thing. It's the whole, what's the term for it? Wetware.
Yeah.
It's a wetware attack. It's the phishing attempts and all that. But
yeah, it's the social engineering. The least secure component is always the human being.
What's the old saying? Problem exists between chair and keyboard?
Pepcac. Keyboard and chair. Pepcac.
Yep.
Yeah, or loose nut on chair.
No, I haven't. I'm drinking iced tea. I've never heard that one before, and it almost came out my nose.
But the thing, going back to the IRS story, the thing is they're saying, this is IRS Commissioner John Koskinen, quote, "We're confident that these are not amateurs. These are actually organized crime syndicates that not only we, but everyone in the financial industry are dealing with." Well, maybe, but what you have to understand is those organized crime syndicates can't do anything that you and I couldn't if we knew where to go online to look and what tools to download and everything.
One thing I thought was interesting, when I was out, people that don't know, I was out, I had surgery on my foot and I had a lot of downtime, so I got a lot of audiobooks from Audible, and one I was listening to was Spam Nation, about a Washington Post reporter, I believe it was, last name is Krebs, I don't remember his first name, who actually went to Russia to look into all these gangs, and most of it is like all big mafia stuff, but there are always the people that are just kind of like the rogues going in there and doing stuff on their own. Crime syndicates, yeah, possibly, but there are the lonely guys in their basement that, have nothing better to do it. Hey, it's all about the kicks,
Yeah, we've said it over and over again. It's just math, and math works the same for everybody.
Everything can be hacked.
Yeah.
I remember the Robert Redford movie, Sneakers. They got in.
Love that movie.
Oh, that's a great movie, with the exception of the pandering to the Democrat Party at the end.
Yeah.
But they got into everything. There wasn't anything they couldn't get into. Everything can be bypassed. There are best practices that organizations should be doing, but I bet if people really knew exactly how many of these organizations aren't doing just the really basic common sense stuff to protect your records or whatever, to quote the catchphrase that David Letterman, and God rest his show, they will pelt you with rocks and garbage.
And I guess the IRS, it really seems to me the IRS is trying to save face here by trying to pretend that it's these, big criminals, when in reality, it could just easily be, John Q. Hacker in the Philippines or wherever.
And who's to say it couldn't be an inside job either?
That's true. But I don't know. It's the kind of thing. It's a fairly easy. All you really need, I think, is like someone's zip code and their social or something like that, and you could get it. And they've taken it down, and hopefully when they put it back up, it'll have more security measures. But I don't want to completely poo-poo the possibility, because there are some pretty sophisticated, organized hacking groups out there that have like human resources departments and everything.
The thing that always gets me is that they always ask you to fill out a security question. You can go to Ancestry.com and get the answers to 90% of that stuff.
Those are horrible. Oh, God. And they're so dumb. It's like, who thought of, like, one I keep seeing over and over again is, what was your high school's mascot? Okay, now let's think about this. How easy is it to find what someone's high school was? Someone apparently knew that and said, aha, but if I make it the high school mascot, they won't be able to figure it out. Okay, one, you can look up high school mascots on the internet. That's easy to find. And two, there's a lot of repeats. There's a lot of knights. There's a lot of Spartans. There's a lot of these. So you actually have fewer possibilities to go through than if you went, with the actual high school name. So security questions are so bad, they should not be doing that.
The only governmental organization that actually has a good setup website that's user-friendly is the National Park Service. All the rest of them, just try finding information.
It's like the more important the website is, the less secure it is. I mean, you've got banks. What could be more important to secure than your banks? And you've got banks saying your password can be no more than 12 characters. What? Yeah, I think to this day, Charles Schwab limits you to no more than 8 characters in your password, and you can only use lowercase letters and numbers. Give me a hash, I'll brute force it in about 3 seconds. That's how bad that is.
Seems to me that your password is buttface.
One thing the IRS said they were doing, which is a good thing, they're notifying the people saying that, hey, your information was one of the ones that was compromised, and that's a good thing. But what we need to watch out for is that's going to open the door for more of these phishing attacks, other people sending you emails, pretending to be the IRS, saying, hey, yours was one of the accounts that was compromised. Here, click this link. Do not click the link.
Years ago, I used to be involved in a hobby called scam baiting, where you would get these letters from the Nigerian 419 scammers, and you would get them to do really bizarre stuff. One of these guys was so good at scam baiting that they actually got these Nigerian scammers to act out the Monty Python pet shop sketch.
Oh, God.
Look up Nigerian 419 pet shop on YouTube. The video is up there.
Oh, check out Dean Cameron's Nigerian spam scam.
Ooh.
It's hilarious.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. That sounds good. I actually got a scammer to send me back a picture of himself holding a sign saying, "I'm a Arschlecker." Arschlecker being German for butt licker.
Yeah.
So, but my point is that they're always doing stuff like, this letter is from the FBI and you've been involved in a scam with a Nigerian, and they're like kind of playing off people that have already been scammed to scam them out of more money. People got to be vigilant. I mean, never click links that you don't recognize. Anytime I get a link in the email, even if it's from somebody that I know, I put that link through a URL scanner, and even then I have second thoughts about.
All you really need to do is just paste it into a text editor and just look at the domain name and make sure there's nothing hinky going on. If it actually is, paypal.com/something, then it's good.
A little hint for everybody that don't know this. If you get a link in an email, then you're not really expecting it, but it sounds like it looks kind of legit. First of all, make sure that in the intro, they don't address you as "dear customer." Secondly, they will never, ever, ever, legitimate companies will never ask you for your password in one of these in an email. And the most important thing, if there's a link on it, and Gmail's pretty good about filtering out most of this, but there's always some that gets through. If there's a link, hold your mouse over it. Don't click it. Hold your mouse over it, and you look in the bar at the bottom of your browser window. It'll show you where that link is going to. If they don't match up, it is 100% a scam. If they do match up, still have second thoughts about clicking it.
Yeah. Don't click links in emails. Don't open attachments. If it's something you're expecting, like you were saying earlier, you change your password and 5 seconds later you get, aha, you changed your password, click this link. You're expecting that. That's good. That's fine.
Right.
But if it's anything else, it's like, no.
And as I just mentioned, an email like that about the password will have your username for your forum or whatever on it. They will never say, "Dear customer."
Say, if you're tired of the promos in this podcast, well, the patrons got it early and with no ads or promos. Just go to patreon.bogosity.tv and donate at any level. Hackers, terrorists, the NSA. But I repeat myself. Your online security is under attack, and the weakest point is your password. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass plugs into your browser and allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords anywhere on the web, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers and all your computers, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, membership info, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications and even mobile devices, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. Okay, another security breach. This one is pretty scary. Although first, I have to toss a brickbat at the register for this clickbait headline. Surgery bot can be hacked to hack you to pieces.
Dun, dun, dun!
Not really, but it is bad, so we'll talk about it. And this was discovered by security researchers at the University of Washington. They looked at a telesurgery unit called the Raven 2, and the idea is the surgeon doesn't have to actually be there in the operating room. It's from the picture, it looks like these two robot arms, and then the surgeon is somewhere else controlling it over the internet. And so that's good. Like if you need a surgery that only one of 5 people in the world can do, that's good.
Drives costs down. I mean, what's not to like about the technology?
Well, the thing is, they didn't really build security into it from the beginning.
Oops.
Especially in things like this, security should not be an afterthought.
Oh, heck no.
Now, they did do one thing, but this is kind of what caused the problem. They put in a failsafe. So if a surgeon accidentally jerks his arm or something like that, or, some packet across the internet gets corrupted or something, and something happens that would be dangerous for the patient, it stops. They call it a software e-stop. But that means that it's possible for an attacker, a man in the middle, to send a malformed packet, giving it this crazy instruction and force that e-stop. And if they flood it with these packets, they can actually stop the surgery altogether, stop the robot from being reset, and just making it impossible to do the surgery.
You know, Steve, we've got some good news and bad news for you. What is it, doctor? Well, the heart surgery was successful, but you can no longer have kids.
Yeah, it slipped just a little bit.
Oops. Something you never want to hear your doctor say.
Now, then this is where this hack you to pieces thing comes in. Not quite, but they're worried about the possibility of actually a man in the middle grabbing one of the surgeon's packets and changing it just a little bit, and then sending it on its way. And so the fear is that if they do that, it won't be big enough to trigger the e-stop, but it will cause the machine to do the wrong thing in the surgery, cut in the wrong direction or whatever.
You know, I'm kind of reminded of, and I was just thinking about this movie the other day. You remember Logan's Run?
Oh, yeah.
There was this scene, I believe it was a plastic surgery scene with this laser robot that just went totally out of control. And, I believe it killed Farrah Fawcett in the movie. And I just get that picture in my head. That or, what was it, from the first Terminator film when Arnold Schwarzenegger punches this guy and, goes right up and pulls everything out. And those are the kind of things I'm thinking of. More likely, it's not going to do anything like the headline, says it's going to, hack you to death or that stuff. It's going to be, to paraphrase a bit, one of my favorite bits on Mystery Science Theater 3000, Joel was like, those are all big forms of evil, but I think evil is going to be, more subtle. For example, what do you think about Hitler? Oh, I hate him. All right. You remember the band Styx? Yeah, they had a few good hits, but oh God, I see what you're saying. It's going to be something subtle. They're not going to do stuff. It's not going to be stuff like that. And I highly doubt people would get in there to purposely kill somebody unless it's a remote assassination attempt, which I would not put past our government, sadly. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but the NSA does enough that I guess I can understand conspiracy theory people, but I don't know. I mean, the whole thing, the technology is really cool, but you can't do something like this without assurances that everything's going to be on the up and up. And
well, there's actually a very simple way of doing it, and we've talked about this before. You use a VPN, and then your packets are encrypted, and they come across, and if you try to mess with an encrypted packet, you're not going to be able to change the command or anything. It's just going to be so crazy, it's like, okay, I'm just going to drop that packet.
But Shane, only evil people use VPNs for no good uses.
Yeah. Now, lots of people use VPNs because that's how they connect to work from home and things like that. That's what they were made for originally. And really, something like this, it should have the VPN server built in and have there be no way to connect to this without going through the VPN. That's what they should do.
It shouldn't just have VPN. I mean, it should have security after security after security. I mean, this is...
Oh, of course. I mean, you're going to have to want, secure authentication of passwords and things like that. But for this bug that they're talking about, put in a VPN and they won't be able to do it.
I was going to say common sense, but my political science professor always said common sense isn't always common.
And isn't always sensical.
True that.
If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. So, we've talked quite a bit about the idiocy of content creators trying to stifle what they call piracy. We've also talked about the best way to stop file sharing. Make their content easily available at a good price. And these days, that means video on demand.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also talked about how it's increasingly apparent that they aren't really concerned about privacy, just mandating their extremely profitable yet completely obsolete business model. I'm sorry, piracy doesn't hurt them, and they know it. So unfortunately, once again, the big media companies seem intent on making life terrible for those who are trying to make life good, and actually end piracy by providing cheap video-on-demand services. And this article in Torrent Freak comes from an employee of a video-on-demand service in Europe who wants to remain anonymous because we see how whistleblowers are treated. But he says, quote, "For quite some time we've been working with major studios such as Warner Brothers, Walt Disney, Universal, Sony, 20th Century Fox, and Paramount. We would like to refer to it as collaboration, but unfortunately it's really been a one-way street thus far. Money transits, and the final destination is the majors' pockets. We've been operating a video-on-demand service for quite some time now, trying to make the best of it. Eventually, we grew tired of being shaken down at every turn, and now feel it's time to share the limitations that come with a deal in the legit distribution system." And I mean, the things he talks about, it's just horrendous.
I was reading that article, and it's really, really BS, or as we say around our house, bologna sausage. What they're doing. I mean, I used to subscribe to Netflix, and I enjoyed it, but the problem was that movies I wanted to see, you could not get on there.
Yeah,
there are movies, a lot of classic movies I've never seen that I purposely got Netflix for because I wanted to see them. So I could say, hey, I finally seen them and see what everybody's talking about. Like, I've never seen Citizen Kane or The Godfather or, African Queen or any of these old classic ones. Guess what? You can't get them on Netflix.
Netflix would love to give them to you.
Yeah, Warner Brothers bought up the rights to lots of these old classic movies from the 40s, 50s, 60s.
And Warner Brothers does not like Netflix.
Yeah.
They do not. You cannot get any of the Harry Potter movies on Netflix because they're all Warner Brothers.
Yeah. But what happened, Warner Brothers bought the rights to these from Universal and 20th Century Fox, not just their own ones, and they created their own streaming service, Warner Archives. So you have to subscribe to that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole entertainment thing is a big, let's use the word cluster. I think you guys can fill in the rest. From start to finish. I mean, they don't like Netflix because they see them as an outsider. They don't want them, push them to the side, them and Redbox. You can't get anything good out of any of them. And I love their business models. You can get some of the stuff on Amazon, but, you have to pay extra for the really good ones. And the Amazon, if you get the Prime and then Netflix, their libraries are pretty much the same. This is why Netflix and Amazon have had to go and create their own programming. Oh, by the way, if you've ever seen the Amazon pilot for Zombieland, not the movie, but the pilot for the series they were going to do, you're not missing much. But
I'm really enjoying House of Cards on Netflix, though. That's really good. I'm into the second season on that.
I like what they did with that. I haven't seen it. Like I said, I haven't had Netflix for years, but I like what they did. They released the whole thing at one time so that you can view this whole season at your leisure.
Apparently, that was what Netflix said. Give us the whole season at one time so people can binge watch.
Yeah. And then, they tried to take down, and I've listened and heard your struggles with, not necessarily struggles, but your criticisms over what the entertainment industry is doing to try to shut down torrent sites. There was a pretty decent found footage horror movie about 4 or 5 years ago called The Tunnel. It was done by some Australian writers, directors. It was really professional. I mean, we're not talking, sci-fi quality stuff. We're talking stuff that should have been released in the theater here. And the plot was about these World War II bunkers underneath Sydney and some creatures that they found down there, and real professional movie. They distributed it through Pirate Bay and through torrents, and they made their money because the torrent that they uploaded was just the movie. You could buy a complete DVD with special features and everything, and people that liked the movie either bought the complete DVD or they had another revenue stream where you could buy a cell from the film or several cells or whatever, and they made their money that way. And they did good enough that last I heard they were going to be doing a sequel to it.
Cool.
But, movie industry doesn't like that because everybody that uses a torrent is evil.
They don't want the competition. That's what it's really about. It's not about stopping pirates. It's about stopping competitors from having an alternate means of distribution. That's what it's been about since day one.
If Hollywood would come out with better movies, maybe people wouldn't be downloading the stuff. I mean, you get crap that's been regurgitated over and over. And
oh, God, there was a great meme I saw on one of the Doctor Who Facebook groups, and it was Peter Capaldi, and he was saying things like, wait a minute, and Terminator, Mad Max, and all the other things that will be done this year. What year is this?
Exactly. I've heard that the new Mad Max movie is really, really good. And in fact, Cracked just did a great article about it, about how the movie industry can revive itself if they would learn the lessons that the new Mad Max movie is teaching the industry. It's an excellent article. You should read it. But
I mean, the thing is, if they make a movie like Batman or Mad Max, they know just from the title they're going to get people in the theater no matter what the movie is. If they make an original movie with original characters, they don't get that.
Well, it's the comfort zone in it. They don't want to do anything that's new or different, anything, because they like the steady stream of money. They don't like taking chances.
That's how you can actually tell if an industry is heavily corporatized by government, is if they just want to keep playing it safe like that. What makes people take the chances and innovate and make new things is competition.
I'm finding more really good independent stuff, more independent, fan films, podcasts, whatever. I mean, we are not limited in our entertainment choices anymore, and that is not something that the media conglomerates get.
So getting back to the story, he talks about, and we've been talking for how long? He's talking about minimum guarantees, and basically, you have to take every licensed film as part of a single deal. You can't say, oh, I want this film, I want that film. It's like a package. So he says, quote, if you want to take the latest blockbuster, you must also take the latest winner of the Golden Raspberry Awards. And take our word for it, there are some pretty unworthy films in there. These minimum guarantees are quoted in millions of dollars per deal, and as a result, VOD services like ourselves have to operate on very small profit margins.
Yeah, well, you want The Godfather, I see. Let's see, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope. And you know what? We'll throw in Battlefield Earth for you. God, who's getting the bad deal on that one? The good deal.
Okay, so because of that, they have these small profit margins. But in addition to that, they have to pay revenue shares, which could be 50% or even up to 70% out of your profit margin.
People didn't want to see Battlefield Earth in the theater. What makes you think people are going to want to see it on demand or as part of a package? People don't want that movie. They don't understand this. It goes also to something with the cable companies. There was an issue about 5-6 years ago where Dish Network, Viacom, created a new channel, Nicktoons. Dish Network didn't want it because they thought it was redundant. So what did Viacom do? Pulled all their channels. Who lost there? They're playing us, the consumer, for the pawn.
And they say, oh, how horrible it is that they make you pay all this money for all these channels and you only won 3. Dish Network would love nothing more than to offer these channels a la carte.
But you can't do it. And the cable companies at Dish Network or whatever, when they tell you that it would be more expensive for them to give you the channels a la carte, they are not lying, because that's the way all the movie studios and the entertainment conglomerates write the damn contracts, so that you will pay more, because they're getting a big discount. But if you don't take the National Geographic Wild Channel of dog pooper scoopers or whatever, you're not going to get all of their other channels. You're not going to see that brilliant Cosmos that was just on. But you have to take the National Geographic pooper scooper channel to see Cosmos.
Yeah, and he also talks about just the things just in the nature of video on demand that make it so expensive. There's storage, and the more of these movies they get, the more storage they need. And it's probably not just the case that you get one server and put them all on there. What if that server goes down? You're going to want redundant servers. You're probably going to want data centers in different countries because of you want to get it close to the people who are viewing them. You've got the streaming costs, the bandwidth, the platform development. DRM is a big deal. That's the digital rights management, which stops you from copying, which doesn't really stop you from copying. But one thing that means is that, like, if you watch something on Netflix, it is encrypted just for you. And then when someone else watches it, it's encrypted for them. So it's not the same bits going across. So it's not the case that your ISP can just cache it. And there have been a lot of small ISPs that say, hey, Netflix, what we want to do is we'll take the expense of this, but let us build like a 100 terabyte data center where we'll just, someone watches episode 1 of House of Cards, then we'll cache it and we'll give it to the other people who want that. But they can't do it because of the DRM. And then you also have geo-blocking. You have to keep track of who in what country can view and not view each of these. And I mean, it's just incredible.
The geo-locking is the thing that pisses me off the most because it is used both by corporations and oppressive governments to keep people from seeing stuff. And that's absolutely totally reprehensible. And now countries like Iran are out there banning VPNs because people can get information from the outside.
Like that'll work.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
I mean, if a VPN is just encrypted traffic, all you're seeing is packets full of pseudo-random noise, so how can you tell? What you do is like you figure out, oh, this IP address is a VPN server, we'll block it, but all they have to do is change their IP address. All right, so back to the story, and he talks about some other stuff like windowing, and you can read through the article and see that for yourself, but it's just a pile-on of a whole bunch of stuff like that. And he says, quote, "We love films, and originally started a VOD business hoping to provide a legit solution that would entertain millions. How will we ever be successful while we have to operate on such stiff policies? Well, we won't. It's no wonder that streaming and P2P services are thriving. Major being the major studios. Constraints imposed on people who are trying to abide by their standards are just disabling anyone trying to be competitive enough and offer a comprehensive catalog at a decent cost to the public. With their own policies, the major movie studios are sawing at the branch on which they sit. They probably realize it to some extent, but they certainly don't care enough to do something about it. Surely this is because piracy is not hurting them as much as they want us to believe. By cutting some slack to their partners, they would have concrete tools to cut down piracy. They're simply too comfortable to consider that as an option."
Michael Moore hates capitalism. Why isn't he doing a movie about this? If anything, he would be the one to do a movie about this. I mean,
no, because he loves it because he profits from it. He says
true.
He hates capitalism, but he profits.
Yeah, you ever seen a picture of his house up in northern Michigan?
Oh, geez.
Hypocrite. Not just the movie industry. You also had the musicians that were getting screwed over by the major studios. And then you get people like Public Enemy and Prince and David Bowie and Radiohead, taken to the internet. And Radiohead's got a great thing where, first of all, I don't like Radiohead, but you could download all of their albums off of their website. And last I heard that the price was whatever you can afford. And they're still making millions of dollars. And not a single penny of that is going to the major studios. I was reading an article, it might have been on Cracked.com. Cracked is really good about the whole media conglomerate baloney. Where there was this band, I can't remember who it was or the song, but they had this big hit on the radio. Yes, kids, there was such a thing called radio, and they wanted to make a video for it, and so the studio gave them this money to make the video, and even though they sold millions of records, they never made one single penny off of that song because of the greed of the studios. And the paradigm's coming down. And it's been on its way down for a while. And
they just go to governments to have them pass law after law after law to keep it afloat. That's the only reason it hasn't collapsed yet.
No kidding. And I don't know, how much more are the people going to take? I don't know. I guess that's the question I ask about every topic.
Bogosity.tv and all of its services are hosted at GoDaddy. I've been very satisfied with GoDaddy's services and their wonderful 24/7 customer support for over 10 years now. So I'm happy to be able to give you this special offer. Just sign up for any new domain, web hosting, email, or other service and get 35% off with the code WOWNOBOGON. That's WOWNOBOGON. Because there's nothing bogus about these savings on quality internet hosting. Just go to GoDaddy.com and use the code WOWNOBOGON. So we've talked quite a bit about the Gamergate controversy, and this refers to a group of gamers who just got fed up with corruption in gaming journalism. And as we pointed out, that's just an extension of the corruption in journalism we see all over the place. Well, not surprisingly, journalists don't like having their corruption pointed out. So they started engaging in smear campaigns against Gamergate, As we've seen, they've accused the Gamergate people of all sorts of crap that could actually be more accurately said of the anti-Gamergate people. Well, now Daily Kos has jumped in on the action. And this is from Idle Dilettante in an article, Sargon of Akkad and Thunderfoot, Gamergate's well-paid talking heads. And these are two YouTubers. We mentioned Thunderfoot quite a bit, and I have done videos both praising and attacking him whenever I feel it's warranted. And Sargon of Akkad, I think we mentioned once or twice. He's the one who came up with Sargon's Law, which is that if someone complains about what someone else is doing, it more likely applies to them. So here's how it starts out, quote, Gamergate is like the Tea Party. Oh, what a great start there, isn't it? If the Tea Party was comprised of mostly 14 to 25-year-old tech-savvy white boys on the internet. And that's just how they keep trying to portray it. And it was amazing when they started doing that. There started being this hashtag Not Your Shield. We've talked about this before, where women and minorities who sided with Gamergate started tweeting with the hashtag Not Your Shield to go against the anti-Gamergate people. Oh, they're just shills. They're just pretending to it. And then, so they started posting pictures of themselves holding up a sign with hashtag Not Your Shield on it. Then they accused them of photoshopping on it, so they had to start making videos on it. And it's just like they just have to do this. They just have to do this as a way of demonizing them.
Well, as you know, I am a paid shill for Monsanto and for our reptilian overlords, blessed be their name.
Oh, yes. And the Illuminati and NASA and the Koch brothers and let's see who else.
And, you know, you've talked a lot about the social justice warriors thing, and honestly, I just know I don't use the term social justice warriors. Whenever I see hashtag SJW, I'm like, Super Jehovah's Witnesses are here. But it just goes back to the whole social justice thing. And social justice in and of itself, if you strip it down to its bare bones, is a good and right thing to do. But the problem is that you get people with agendas latching onto it and saying, well, you've got more than this person over here, which means you're greedy, so you need to give it to them. Or, you know, well, you were born in a wrong place at a wrong time, so you obviously have privilege. There's no thought involved or needed for that sort of thing. And that's kind of what I'm getting here. I was not as familiar with Gamergate. It's not something I have been really paying attention to, but I do know the basics of how it started. And how this started is totally indefensible. And then they're like, well, because it was a woman at the start of it, it's instantly bad. But of course, you know, nobody talks about, you know, guys doing this sort of thing all the time.
Yeah, who was on the other end of it?
Yeah.
Who was on the other end of it? Was Zoe Quinn not sleeping with guys?
It takes two to tango.
And when it started out, it wasn't even Zoe Quinn they were attacking. It was the guys at Kotaku and wherever that she was sleeping with and getting favors from. Zoe Quinn didn't really become the target of attack until she started going after the fine young capitalists. That's what made her a target.
I mean, it takes two to tango. The people at Kotaku and whatever else, you know, whoever else were behind it, you know, they're just as much to blame, probably even more to blame than what's her name.
Well, because if they had had integrity to begin with, the whole thing never would have happened.
Exactly, and that's something that people aren't talking about or saying. It's easier to have a knee-jerk reaction than to look for the facts.
So they go on to say, quote, Gamergate and its diaspora has an agenda. Shouldn't that be have an agenda? Because you did two things that's plural, but anyway. It is to roll back the achievements of cultural Marxists, bolded in quotes, social justice warriors, bolded in quotes, and the forces of political correctness by any means necessary. For many Gamergaters, life is phrased in terms of a game, and progressives are their sworn enemies. And I mean, this is it's just the kind of thing we've talked about before. The war on drugs, minimum wage, social security, all sorts of things had at their root racism and sexism, and were done as much to keep women and minorities down as anything else. Now that the zeitgeist has kind of gone away from that, we don't have segregation anymore, and the women's lib movement made a lot of strides and things like that. Now that doesn't sell very well, so now if you don't like minimum wage or social security, it's why do you hate the poor? It's the same racist and sexist policies, but they just convince you that if you take the opposing side, then you're this horrible person.
A lot of the stuff is codified by law, but more specifically by the social norms that are out there to be unacceptable. It still happens. We still have racism and sexism and that, but people want to keep it alive because there is money and power in keeping people down. And I don't know, maybe I'm being sexist and racist for saying that, but there's a lot of people of color, a lot of people of the opposite gender that would agree with this assessment.
They do, and they lump them all with the others. And in fact, I think it mentions a few of them later on, but we'll get to that.
It's not so much social justice warriors, which they're just do-gooders. They're just trying to do good, quote unquote. I should, if people could see me, they would see that I'm doing the little air quotes thing with my fingers. Do-gooders.
When I read this next part, remember, this is Daily Kos I'm reading it from. Quote, to Gamergaters, their opinions are objective fact, whereas opposing ideas are subjective nonsense. Boy, the projection is strong in this one. But
let's be honest. Isn't that everything, just not Gamergate? I mean, everything, yay, our team, boo, they're evil. They kick puppies.
That's pretty much the entire political situation, yeah. Oh, check this out. Quote, they actually believe feminism and progressives are literal conspiracies perpetuated by Gawker, Kotaku, and the Jews to foist a progressive agenda into an unsuspecting... How did the Jews get into this?
When all else fails, blame the Jews.
Yeah. Well, it's like if they can just kind of like slip you into any category of racist that they want. So apparently Gamergaters are anti-Semites now. For some reason, they don't give any reasons for anything. They don't actually respond to anything Gamergaters say as we go through this. We'll see it's just about ad hominem attacks.
It's like they're little children sometimes. When my kids get into an argument or ask me for something, or like my daughter will ask her brother for something, and he'll say no, and she'll say why. He'll say because. And that's what these people are doing. They're just saying because. That's not a reason. That's an excuse.
Yeah. And so we're about to get to the point where they talk about Sargon and Thunderfoot. And it's interesting that their real big complaint is how much money. See, they make money doing this. And money is horrible. It's kind of funny, though, because when I look to the right of their website, I see advertisements. Amazing how that works.
Yeah. Capitalism is bad, except for when I profit from it.
Yep. Okay, so Sargon of Akkad. Sargon makes YouTube talk shows against feminism and progressives. Sargon has a British accent, which I assume justifies the $600 plus cost of his videos nowadays. Okay, first of all, I guess it couldn't possibly have anything to do with the content. And second of all, it's not like he's charging for the videos. He monetizes them, and I think he probably has a Patreon and maybe a donate page and things like that. So Sargon relies on his income as a Gamergate talking head to cover his expenses. He has no other job. Well, you know what? Good for him. Okay, this is supposed to be a problem.
Holy cow, you mean he might actually spend that money on food? God forbid. You shouldn't eat.
He's making money delivering a product that people want and doing something he loves to do. The Fiend!
Evil! Evil!
I wonder if this guy has another job than writing articles or whatever.
Ghost writing articles?
Yeah. Quote, Sargon likes ancient history, which he seems to have learned about by playing too much Rome Total War. Again, no examples of Sargon talking about history and saying how he got it wrong or anything like that.
Well, you see, I learned everything I know about robotic sciences from playing Berserk. So.
There you go. Quote, essentially, Sargon of Akkad comes on twice a week to give Gamergaters the play-by-play of what's going on in their movement and to update them with the newest talking points. They don't mention
providing information?
They don't mention any of these talking points. They don't say what they are or why they're wrong or whatever.
Complain so much easier.
And then they just talk about his income and how it's going up and up. And Thunderfoot is the same way, Phil Mason. And again, I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with his channel. Mostly love, but, there's times where he's gotten into politics and just gone completely off the rails. But I don't really have a problem with Thunderfoot on the whole. But they say, quote, Mason makes several $1,000s per video, again, good for him, releasing hateful diatribes against Anita Sarkeesian. I've seen these hateful diatribes Mostly it's just pointing out how what she said is wrong.
Well, pointing out somebody being wrong or errors in somebody's reasoning or arguments, well, that's just racist or sexist.
Again, no mention of the arguments, no mention of any kind of rebuttals, no saying he was factually incorrect in the things he said.
You know, I saw this great article come across my Facebook page just yesterday. It was an article. It was like, Rickrolling is racist and sexist. And there was a link to an article. I can't remember what website it was on. And then it was like, as this article from this other website says, Rickrolling, the internet joke of Rickrolling is racist and sexist. And you click the link and it's a Rickroll.
Yeah. That's a meta Rickroll there.
Everything is racist and sexist, and people that say that, it's trying to be the better person, the more honest person. It should be everybody's goal in life. But people, just like I said before, they have their agendas.
So, again, more complaining about how much money he makes. Again, I don't know if that's jealousy or what. But then at the end, he says, quote, "For every Sargon of Akkad or Thunderfoot, there's at least 5 mundane mats. That is, guys who work just as hard on their anti-feminist videos, but who don't earn enough on Patreon to pay the rent." Well, I guess that's the way it goes. But doesn't that kind of blow the argument they've been making that they only do this because this is an easy way to make tons of money?
Like I said, I'm not really familiar with the whole Gamergate thing, but I'm familiar with some of what Thunderfoot does. And just to say that he's making money off of the Gamergate videos, I mean, that's just disingenuous right there. He's got tons of different videos about many different topics, and I would say that Gamergate is only a small, tiny fraction of what he does. But, he's high profile. You go after the whole high profile people, and maybe that will encourage everybody else to shut up.
Here's the part where he brings up Karen Strawn and Sage Gerard of A Voice for Men. And he mentions how A Voice for Men was listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center in 2012. I haven't achieved that one yet. I did make the anti-vaxxers blacklist.
I'm on it too. I'm on that too.
Oh, you made it. I made it. Awesome. Okay, now I just need to be labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I will have arrived.
My life's work is complete.
Does any thinking person take the Southern Poverty Law Center seriously? I mean, anyone they don't like is a hate group. That's basically it.
Well, they do some good stuff once in a while, but a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, I mean, they started out pretty good. They were going after the KKK and stuff like that. And then it's like once they got in the position they did, they just became corrupted by their own success. And, it's like they tried to, I think it was Tom Woods, they tried to say was racist because he taught an economics class at this one place, which later founded an organization which a few years after that went on to be racist. And that means that Tom Woods is or something like that.
I used to do research into the Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's a parallel there. There's a guy who used to be on the governing board of the organization back in 1980. He wrote a book, Crisis of Conscience, which tells about the organization, and he got kicked out of the Jehovah's Witnesses for having dinner with somebody who got kicked out of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Same thing.
All right, quote, "Although Patreon's terms of service says that bullying, threats, harassment, and hate speech are not allowed on the platform, these above-mentioned accounts evidently meet their standards." Maybe because it's not bullying or threats or anything like that. They're people making arguments against your bullshit.
I get the whole thing about bullying. It's crap that I went through in high school. You still see it today, and it's a real legitimate issue.
But bullying is not someone talking crap about you on YouTube. That's not bullying.
I was going to say, but to call this bullying cheapens the concept of bullying. It cheapens the whole thing.
I think these accounts stay because Patreon itself profits from hosting these haters. Yes, it's a conspiracy.
Patreon and GoFundMe has got a thing right now where Dane Wigington, who wrote What in the World Are They Spraying?, to make a movie filled with damn lies, and it's still up there. What's your point?
Quote, "I think in the future we can expect even more misogynist crowdfunding on Patreon and similar platforms, packaging harassment as entertainment, and earning money from it as a cottage industry." Well, Daily Kos would know all about that, wouldn't they?
I'm envisioning him after writing that line, talking to somebody sitting next to him. "I did good, did I? Didn't I do good? I did good, didn't I?"
History is written by the winners, and so apparently is economics. That's why there's LibertyClassroom.com. Probably the best single learning resource for history and economics on the web, LibertyClassroom.com teaches U.S. history, Western Civ, and economics from actual university professors. There's lots of free material to get you started, including introductory lectures on all these subjects, and when you sign up, you get the full site's content for just $99 a year, less than the price of 2 cups of coffee a month. And if you type in the promo code Bogosity in all caps, you'll get your first year for just $88. Lectures are available in both video and audio format, so you can watch or listen to them on your computer, your phone or tablet, or in your car. Learn at your own pace about the subjects you're interested in and become a more effective debater. You'll also get access to lots of supplemental materials and even the professors themselves via the discussion forum and even live video chats. Inform yourself against the myths and propaganda of our society. Visit LibertyClassroom.com. And now it's time to Komodo Dragon, this week's biggest Bogon emitter. Well, I ran into a new term this past week: sea lioning. Apparently, this is the horrendous, despicable practice of insisting that someone actually provide evidence to support their assertion.
How dare you?
And it seems to be the latest go-to tactic for New Wave feminists and other social justice warriors. This week, biggest Bogon emitter goes to Tegiminis of Simplication.com for basically coming right out and saying this is an excuse to avoid providing evidence, while seeing nothing at all wrong with it. So he describes sea lioning as, quote, the act of jumping into a discussion with demands for evidence and answers to questions.
Oh, dear.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's absolutely wrong to actually have evidence for your beliefs. I'm on Facebook. I'm a member of a group called Chemtrails Are Killing Us, which is a fun group. It's actually done by a bunch of us who know that chemtrails are a bunch of Barbra Streisand. And whenever somebody comes in there promoting chemtrails, and they post a picture of a scary-looking sky with airplanes and white lines, and first of all, we ask them, "Are you snorting any white lines?" But then it's like, okay, fine, you got a scary-looking picture there. What evidence do you have? And then they just go scurrying away. And this whole sea lioning thing, I was not familiar with this until I actually read the article this morning. Nothing like being prepared. And what it looks to me like is this is just to protect people's little itty-bitty feelings. Oh, how dare they ask you to... I'm sounding like Kripke from Big Bang.
They need their safe space. They need their safe space with their plush toys and everything to go to.
Echo chamber.
All right, quote, why is it an awful thing to do? Why do people react so negatively to a request for evidence? Surely a reasoned, rational person would acquiesce to such a statement. Well, no. And his reasoning is, quote, responding to it is a complete waste of time. It is a complete waste of time if you're not actually going to,
These discussions are not so much to change the mind of the person bringing it up, but to prevent the virus from infecting the people that are on the sidelines of the discussion.
Exactly. It's for the lurkers.
Them the evidence to actually make correct, scientifically valid decisions. That's what asking for your proof is about.
Yeah, it's for the lurkers to show that you don't actually have squat. And I think they know this, and that's why they came up with this sea lioning thing. If they can kind of make it into a pseudo-fallacy, they can probably fool people. All right, quote, these questions are not asked because the person genuinely wants to know. If they did, they would do their own digging. Yeah, the homework fallacy. I'm not going to do your homework for you. You have to research every last little bald assertion of mine.
Well, as you are aware, I am a graduate of YouTube U, and so I'm quite well versed on all of this stuff. But this is exactly what conspiracy sheep and truth bots do. It's actually a two-way street. If you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, you baffle them with bullshit. Those people are trying to load question after question after question to throw you in many different directions. That, I think, would be more, quote-unquote, sea lioning.
Yeah.
Trying to confuse the discussion by asking questions.
There's already a term for that, gish galloping.
Gish galloping. You know what? You're right.
But he says, quote, these questions are asked to make you waste your time. It's a way to force you into responding to questions phrased neutrally, but asked in bad faith. So what does asking in bad faith mean? you are essentially looking for a way to demean, degrade, or otherwise destroy your target. A good example of a bad faith question is the perennial favorite, when did you stop beating your wife? Well, now wait a minute. The reason why that's a bad question is because contained in it is the assumption that you have been beating your wife, and there's no way to answer it other than attacking that assumption.
Once again, Dane Wigington. What in the world are they spraying? Well, you're assuming somebody's spraying something first.
Yeah. Or like when a creationist says, who created the universe? Well, how do you know the universe it was created, and how do you know it was a who that created it? You know.
Oh, and by the way, I stopped beating my wife yesterday, so just thought I'd throw that in there.
All right. All right, he says, quote, it's easy to ask a question in bad faith using reasoned, good faith practices. No, it isn't! That's the whole point of reasoned, good faith practices!
What I'm getting from him is that asking a question in bad faith is the same thing as asking a question.
Pretty much, yeah. If you ask a question that requires him to support something that he can't support. And he says, quote, this is extremely obvious in documented sea lioning. Gotta love that expression, like it's, official or something. The target responds only for the questioner to immediately grill them for more information, misinterpret the answer, or dismiss it entirely. Look, the whole reason why we ask for sources, it's not that if you have a source you automatically win. It's that if we have a source, we can examine your claim and see how well it stands up. Of course we're going to look at the source, and of course we're going to respond to it, and of course we're going to point out all the problems with it.
Well, you see, Andrew Wakefield said that vaccines cause autism. Oh, really? That's your source? We can't ask questions about that. I don't know, I think I was reading the comments on the article. One that I thought stuck out to me here. So this person says that sometimes someone isn't asking for a debate, but is spreading propaganda that is so harmful that the onlooker has only two choices. A, impose a debate, or B, allow very harmful propaganda to go unchecked. And I thought that was very, very insightful and 100% on the button. You can't let bullshit spread.
Yeah, that's why I get people saying, well, why are you bothering? You're never going to convince him. Well, I mean, if you're one-on-one, then yeah, that's the time you stop and just leave and go do something productive. But if you're on a public forum, you don't want his lies and his misinformation to be spread to other people. You have to attack them everywhere they are.
Bad ideas are a virus that need a vaccine.
Yep.
Wow, that was brilliant. I'm on a roll.
That was good. That was good. All right, quote. They have to fight the natural instinct to respond in good faith to neutrally phrased questions, as answering them will only bring more. No, really? We're going to continue to question you? It's a forced violation of the empathy that a compassionate person feels towards others. See, these people, they aren't compassionate. They don't have empathy. They're just a bunch of psychopaths.
What evidence do you have that Barney the dinosaur is an evil being from Satan? Do the research.
Actually, all I have to do is play you any episode of Barney, and you can come to that conclusion.
Well, yeah, that's true. Been there, done that, not going back.
All right, quote. Compound this with being sea lioned by multiple people. He says, but multiple people. I think he means by multiple.
Yeah.
Sea lioned by multiple people, as is common on Twitter, and you've got a recipe for a very frustrating and fruitless timeline. Wow, you mean that more than one people has actually figured out that what you're saying is bullshit?
That's the one thing I love about the chemtrails are killing us group, is that we are totally in there, and it's all run by skeptics, all people that know the whole thing is baloney, all people that know the science behind the thing, and they will come in, and they'll post their pictures. We'll ask them all of the questions about the science, and did you have samples of the contrails? Were they tested? Blah 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 blah. And then they'll go off, and as I said, they'll say that go to Google and do your research, and they're expecting an echo chamber. Yeah, and then they call us the trolls. Right. I will grant that the name of the group kind of is a bit trolly. But you came on our turf, and the group clearly has a statement about what's expected of people that go there. If you're going to post a picture, have your evidence ready. We won't tolerate pictures without evidence, and they know it, and then they call you the troll, even though the information and the rules and whatever totally out there.
Quote. Being sea lioned is a lose-lose situation, unfortunately. Well, it certainly is if you can't actually back up what you're saying with evidence. Amazing how we never complain about this. People ask us, well, where's your evidence that minimum wage destroys jobs? Okay, here you go. Here's a study. Here's another study. Here's a meta study. Here's more information on it. Here's the economic theory behind it. Blah, 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 blah. Boom.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because I actually unfriended somebody because of a thing that I put on my Facebook page about the minimum wage. And he was like, I'm a small business owner and, I pay my people X amount of dollars and it doesn't hurt me. And it got to the point where I was just tired of it, not dealing with it. And of course, he didn't put up any links or anything about purporting. It was just all of his personal experience. So I booted him.
You gotta love the argument from self-authority. Someone comes on to a YouTube comment and, yes, well, I've been doing nuclear physics for the last 30 years, and I can tell you.
I've been working with computers for 40 years, and Tron was a documentary.
Yeah. All right. Quote, here's what he says to do. Quote, block or dismiss sea lioners and go about your normal business, letting them vent their frustrations out where you can't see them. It's much healthier for your psyche. Yeah, go to your safe space. Go back to your echo chamber. It's all right. You'll be fine. You don't have to worry about those nasty, wasty people who don't agree with you and want you to prove what you say.
Mom! Mommy, he asked me for evidence! Oh. Wow, that was pathetic.
Quote, we must be suspicious of purportedly honest and neutral questions. When you are the target of a sea lion brigade, you gotta love those weasel words there, the purpose is to get you to waste your time responding to every little complaint, and falsely amiable questions are the easiest way to get you to waste it, so don't. Spend it doing more constructive activities like making a game, talking to others genuinely interested in dialogue, in other words, what people who agree with you, or any form of self-care. You owe nothing, especially not answers, to a mob whose intent is to harass you.
It's the echo chamber. And it's not just this whole sea lioning thing. It's in schools, it's in your workplace. People don't want ideas that are contrary to the norm in that environment to be questioned.
So all of that makes Tegiminis and any other SJW that uses this bogus sea lioning excuse this week's biggest Bogon emitter. Bogosity.tv is a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for sites to earn advertising fees by advertising and linking to Amazon.com. Just clear your cookies and go to amazon.bogosity.tv, or check the right-hand side of the podcast page for Amazon's best deals, including the deal of the day and limited-time lightning deals on all sorts of great products. So next time you buy online, go to amazon.bogosity.tv. And now we can lift our moods, because we've got another recipient of the Silver Cluon Award, the only form of praise this podcast gives. Now, I don't know whom to actually credit for this. It was posted to Reddit by Nate the Great, but I don't know if he's the creator or not, but it's a beautiful illustration of how gerrymandering works. And gerrymandering is when politicians draw up district boundaries to make things favorable to them in elections, really to ensure that they don't get any real opposition.
Oh boy.
And this illustration makes it so simple and easy to understand when it's normally so confusing that I just had to give it the silver Cluon.
Oh boy, I've got stories. First of all, directing people to an article Cracked did about 4 years ago, 5 ways U.S. democracy is rigged. And number 5, it talks about all about the whole gerrymandering thing.
Oh yeah. So this graphic shows 50 precincts. They're arranged in 5 columns.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
The first 2 are red. Mm-hmm. The other 3 are blue. And he doesn't actually say Democrat and Republican. Some people are trying to say, well, he's trying to say it's the Republicans who are doing it. Well, it's both that's doing it. But, maybe he could have chosen like green and yellow or something and avoided that. But either way, doesn't matter. You've got 60% of the people are blue and 40% are red. Now we divide this into 5 districts. And he just divides it evenly along the top so that each district has 4 red squares and 6 blue squares. And you do that all the way down. And when you have your election, the candidates from all 5 districts are from the blue party and none from the red. So even though they're 40% of the population, they don't get represented. And then he shows another way to draw it, which is kind of weird. And, well, there's a certain symmetry to it, but it's all kind of snaky around and everything. Now, he's been able to draw the districts where there are 3 districts with a red majority and 2 with a blue majority. So it's all on how you draw the districts.
Yeah. I noticed that the article that I was reading on Cracked actually had some examples from both Illinois and North Carolina. And here in Illinois, the one that they talk about is Illinois' 4th district. It covers Chicago and some of the suburban areas.
Oh, yeah, that's in this link I have, yeah.
It's like a big blob to the north, 5 miles to the south, another big blob, and then it follows old rail lines and the interstate so that it can make this like C shape. There's not even houses or businesses in this area. So so at one point, this person is representing 8 lanes of interstate. Boy, I'm so glad that I have representation when I'm driving on 294.
But the district has to be contiguous.
Oh, of course. And it gets even worse. Well, I mean, that's the worst example, but...
Oh, no, there are worse examples. We'll go into them.
There are worse examples, but in Illinois, you've got, I was going to say congressman, but he's an inmate now. Jesse Jackson Jr. had this district on the south side of Chicago, fully Democrat, tightly populated. His district went all the way down to Wilmington, Illinois, which is 40 miles to the south. It crossed 40 miles of farmland to take a solidly Republican town and put it in a Democrat district. Bobby Rush, same thing, goes 60 miles south to the town of Watseka. Watseka, you got to drive for it. The easiest way to get to Watseka is to drive to the end of the earth and go 10 miles further. And yet, a congressman from Chicago is representing this red farm town. How is that equitable? Oh, well, Democrats get to stay in. Here in Illinois, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican because there are no conservative Republicans in Illinois, but that's beside the point. But it's not equitable. I don't know how it is in North Carolina, but the way local government is set up in the Midwest is you got your state, obviously, and then the counties. But then beneath that, you got townships. Townships are all 7 by 7 miles, and almost pretty much all of the counties follow the 7 by 7 mile thing. So we have, for the most part, even districts. I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but why not use the townships? Why not? Because that would be fair. That's why we can't have fairness.
Yeah. Yeah, in North Carolina, it's pretty bad. Most of our races for state house or state senate, I think over half of them across the state, will only have one candidate unless we find someone able to run as a libertarian in that district, because they're just these safe districts. And like, if it's a Republican type district, then the Democrats know, okay, we shouldn't bother putting anyone up there because we can't win, or vice versa if it's a Democrat district.
One thing that was really, really telling to me is back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a congressman from Chicago, Dan Rostenkowski. He was involved in a huge scandal with the House Post Office, and he got soundly defeated by a Republican candidate. And when he was sworn in, Rostenkowski told this Republican, "Don't get used to it."
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most telling thing I've ever heard about the way that these districts are written.
Okay, so the Washington Post took this and added another one in that I think is good, which would be a more fair representation. Here, we're just drawing it straight down in the districts. So then we have 3 blue districts and 2 red districts. And so you really get the proportional representation that you're looking for. So that was a good addition to it, I thought. But they also have this other article on America's most gerrymandered congressional districts. And they start with one near me, North Carolina's 12th district. This used to be Mel Watt's district. I'm not sure who it is from there now. But it kind of winds up I-85, starting from Charlotte and going to, I don't think it goes all the way to Durham, but I think it goes past Greensboro or something like that. And then it's got this other little offshoot that goes up, and it just kind of snakes around to try and make it Democrat. Maryland's 3rd district, which they call the Praying Mantis. I guess I can kind of see that. But again, it's kind of winding around and doing all sorts of things. And it looks like there might be a couple of places where it's just following a road or a railroad track or something. Florida's 5th district, I believe Jonathan Lachey's talked about this one. You kind of have this weird horseshoe type district. And then you have this tiny little piece of red. And then you have the rest of the district up there, I guess, around Jacksonville. Pennsylvania's 7th district, which they call Goofy Kicking Donald Duck, which is actually kind of what it looks like.
Love it.
Another one from North Carolina, the 12th district, over on the eastern part of the state. Actually, there's a nice big part of it in a more sparsely populated area of the state, but this got all these tiny little offshoots. And Texas's 33rd district, which is just weird. It looked like a kid is trying to draw all the continents of the world or something. North Carolina's 4th district, which is really crazy, and it's got this one point where it kind of goes into corners. And that actually happens in a city called Cary. And a few years ago, a friend of mine, Brian Irving, ran for Congress as a Libertarian in the 2nd district, which the 4th district kind of cuts through. And I had an online friend in Cary, and I told her, hey, you should vote for my friend Brian Irving if you're in his district. And she didn't know what district she was in. And I didn't want to ask, her address or anything, but I asked, what road are you on? And I'll look for it. And she told me. And it literally depended on which side of the road she was on as to whether or not she was in this district. And we're talking like right in the middle of Cary.
Unbelievable. No. Totally believable.
Completely believable, yeah. Illinois' 4th district, the one you're talking about. Texas's 35th district, they call it an upside-down elephant. It's got like elephant thing with like this really long, thin trunk going down. And Louisiana's 2nd district, probably not as bad as the others, but yeah, I mean, it's clear they're just drawing things up however the frick they want to.
Man, it seems like Texas and North Carolina are really taking the cake on this one. I thought Illinois would be the worst. Because, we are the most corrupt state in the country.
North Carolina is really bad.
Wow.
Really, really bad.
And I thought it was interesting on the Cracked article, which I was referring to, where they had a picture of the map of all of the districts, and they said, note how many districts are only slightly Democrat or slightly Republican.
Yeah. Well, now this is interesting, because one confusing thing about redistricting, you might think because the graphic shows they're trying to give themselves a majority in every district, they do more subtle things. A party can gain an advantage by giving majority districts to the other party. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's say you have a state with 10 million people, and you have 5 million Democrats and 5 million Republicans, perfectly 50-50, and the state has 10 districts, so 1 million people per district. Republicans are in power, and you want to draw the districts to keep Republicans in power. You actually give safe districts to Democrats. Okay, so let's say you draw 3 safe districts for Democrats. All right, so you've got these 3 districts, each with 1 million Democrats. And you slink and whine and diddle the districts around to make sure that they're absolutely 100% Democratic. So the Democrats are guaranteed to get their candidates elected from these 3 districts. Now, why would you do that? Because now the other 7 districts are Republican majority. We've segregated 3/5 of the Democrats in these districts. And so if we draw the other districts proportionately, they're now over 70% Republican. So when the election happens, the state houses end up being 70-30 to the Republicans.
You coined a phrase that I'm going to start using in polite conversation. District diddler.
Yeah, but I mean, if you see a district that's clearly been gerrymandered to favor one party, it might well be the other party that's actually getting the advantage from it.
I wonder if people even realize where the term gerrymander comes from. It was, I believe, back in the 1700s, there was a congressman. This is going off the top of my head, who was either first name or last name was Jerry, and the district he was in was drawn in such a way that it looked like a gigantic, like Godzilla type thing, and they called it a gerrymander.
I don't remember the story, but it's in this speech, and this is a great speech. It was at this year's Libertarian Party of North Carolina convention. If you look on their YouTube channel, they have all the speeches up, and this is their banquet speaker who covered all of this and all of the changing demographics and all of the things that they did to try and make sure that they kept getting elected despite, all these changes. Really great speech. If I can find it, I'll put a link in the show notes. But anyway, this is such a good and simple illustration that I just had to give the anonymous creator of this graphic the silver clue on.
Booyah!
Do you want answers to creationist claims against evolution? Would you like to know more about evolution yourself, or even engage creationists more directly, with actual peer-reviewed sources to back you up? My book, How Evolution is Scientific, is designed to show the basics of evolutionary theory and how it is so well supported using the scientific method. It's impeccably sourced, with references to the actual scientific material, and is arranged using the creationists' own criteria of what is scientific. Using their own arguments against them, see how evolution is scientific, but creationism is not, based on observations, accurate predictions, logic, and evidence. Get answers to common creationist claims, and even a primer on abiogenesis, the start of all life. It's all in my book, How Evolution is Scientific, available at Amazon and on Kindle, EPUB, and PDF as well. Get How Evolution is Scientific and never be taken in by creationists again. And now let's defrag the memory of this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire.
Dun dun dun!
And this week, it goes to Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. And we've talked about this before, how he openly lied to a congressional committee and the American people when he said that the NSA wasn't doing any surveillance on Americans. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Then we had all the Snowden revelations. Well, you'll never guess what his defense is. He forgot. He forgot. He forgot.
When I was reading this article, the very, very first thing I thought of was a great bit Steve Martin did on his Comedy Is Not Pretty album. It's called You Can Have $1 Million. And he was like, you can have $1 million and never pay taxes. You say to yourself, Steve, how can I have $1 million and never pay taxes? Well, first, get $1 million. Now, when the tax man comes to your door and says you have never paid taxes, you say to him two simple words. Two simple words in the English language, I forgot. How many times do you let yourself get into terrible situations because you don't say I forgot? Let's say you're on trial for armed robbery. You'd say to the judge, I forgot armed robbery was illegal.
So this comes from his general counselor, Robert Litt, quote, "This was not an untruth or a falsehood. This was just a mistake on his part. We all make mistakes."
Make mistakes just like that, like the surgical robot we were talking about earlier. It was just a mistake.
Oops. What, 100,000 taxpayers got their information stolen? Just a little mishap.
I keep trying to hold off of making the obvious joke. Clap off.
Oh.
Cue the Men at Work song. It's a mistake.
Yeah. And then he also gave the excuse that he didn't have any time to prepare for it. Quote, "We were notified the day before that Senator Wyden was going to ask this question, and the Director of National Intelligence did not get a chance to review it. He was hit unaware by the question. After this hearing, I went to him and said, 'Gee, you were wrong on this,' and it was perfectly clear that he had absolutely forgotten the existence of the 215 program."
Let's say for a second that he did forget. How many other people around him knew about this? You're saying that they just didn't tell him?
Well, and even if we accept that he just forgot it, the fact that he forgot about a program this monumental to spy on millions of Americans makes him too incompetent to be the National Intelligence Director.
You know, I was just looking through the NSA documents here, and there's like a couple $1 billion that are appropriated to some program. Well, what's that about? Don't worry about it. Oh, I wasn't told about it. Oh, totally forgot where that billions of dollars went.
So all of that makes James Clapper this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire.
Well, that wraps up this I Should Spank Myself edition of the Bogosity podcast. As always, you can come to forum.bogosity.tv to read the show notes and join the discussion. This podcast depends on you to keep going, so please donate using the links on the website or at patreon.bogosity.tv, and feel free to join in by sending a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@bogosity.tv. You can even stick it in an audio file if you want. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to Jim Goebel for joining me.
Not a problem.
Until next time, here's a quote from Edward Snowden. "Bathtub falls and police officers kill more Americans than terrorism, yet we've been asked to sacrifice our most sacred rights for fear of falling victim to it." The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license.
Bogosity.
Guys, what's a weenie roast?
What's a weenie roast?
That's from that same episode of Mystery Science Theater, What to Do on a Date.
Yeah.
Kay's been missing since last February. One of my favorite shorts. Kay's worked on the kill floor. She knows where to deliver the blow. Love it. Oh, God.
All right.
Sweet.